Willkommen, bienvenue, and welcome back to Let's Learn the Electric Bass with Lyte. So, have you been practicing your shifting? I know I have. So, it's still not perfect, even over short distances. But it's making progress. I'm getting better at keeping my fingers on the strings. And occasionally I can get it to a point where you don't get any slide between. But my aim is still a little bit off. But that's what this is all about. It's not about being perfect. It's about making progress. And I want to work on both pinky and ring finger up in the fretting hand and down in the plucking hand. Not many people use them, most likely for decent reasons, but I would like them to be strong enough and consistent enough that I could use them if I wanted, and not just be stuck with the first two just because they're traditionally stronger than the rest. But today's episode is about the Overtone series. We talked about it a little bit when talking about the harmonics and tuning. But they go way further than that. They're actually the entire basis for the intervals that I was talking to you about and the scales that we're going to be covering later that everybody uses for everything. So we should probably understand the Overtone series at least a little bit, such that you know where these things came from and why we bother to use them. So these overtones here are always present. So these harmonics, you get rid of the bottom part of the note, and you're left with all of the overtones above that fundamental. And it sounds a little something like this. But if you take that, where we cut the string in half, and cut it in half again, there we go. I think you might be able to hear that one. What interval is that? Between the first overtone, well, it's the second really, because the first is the fundamental. It really depends on your personal nomenclature. So let's call this the first overtone. We'll call this the second overtone. And then the third would be up here. Right there. So this interval is a perfect fifth. Just like we learned down here. So the first one is an octave, then from that octave to the fifth above it, and then from that fifth to the octave above that, which is a perfect fourth, from here to there. So we have our fundamental, we go up an octave, then we go up a fifth, and then up a fourth. So perfect fifth, perfect fourth. And then when you keep going above that, the interval keeps getting smaller. Because, well, frequency is a nice logarithmic sort of thing. That when you take a note and you take it up the octave, you've doubled its frequency. And you take it up another octave. There So imagine this note down here was a single unit of measuring frequency. We're not going to get into hertz just yet. Let's imagine it's some one fictitious made-up unit of frequency, because it's your bottom note. You don't need a lower number. This one would be 2. But then this one would be 4. 1, 2, 4. Well, so now you've got a distance of 1 between the first two, but you got a distance of 2 between the next. And then if you go up another octave, you go up to 8. As you go, the number of units between each octave gets bigger and bigger, but we still feel it as the same distance. It feels like the same distance, so it's not so much the number of units of frequency that you go up, so much as the multiplication. And that's what makes it a logarithmic system when you experience it, because it takes more and more to get the same effect. Well, what does that have to do with anything? Well, 1, 2... Well, if this is 4, where's 3? It's right there. That perfect fifth above the octave is 3 times higher, or has 3 times the frequency of this bottom note. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then to get from 4, to the next octave will be 8. We've got space for 8 more notes. Well, not so much 8 more notes, but you get what I'm saying. Between this and then the next octave up, here, instead of having nothing, like between these two, or having 1 between, like here, you get an extra note between the fifth. You get yourself a major third above that octave before you get to the next fifth. So we've got our fundamental, we've got our first overtone, we've got our second, our third, which is another octave. So times 1, times 2, times 3, times 4, times 5 is the major third. So then times 6 is the perfect fifth again. And then there's times 7. And when you get to times 8, you're at another octave. So that got us our major third. Well, it didn't just get us a major third. Because this is a major third, but this is a minor third. And so the only things that we've got left are really the seconds. Because if you have the octave, you've got the unison. If you've got the perfect fifth, you've also got the perfect fourth. And then if you've got the major third, well, then if you just flip it over, you've got the minor sixth. So something like this. you get the minor sixth. And once you have the minor third, you've got the major sixth. And you don't get the seconds until you're back up to this eighth. This eighth overtone here, where the next one will be a whole step. You could look at the seventh into the eighth, but that's not the one that tends to get used as the major second. It is one more or less, but we usually use the one that goes up to the ninth harmonic as the major second, and then the minor second after that. It gets really tight up there, and those we tend not to use. It's more this major third, and then wanting to have space in between. From what we've gotten up to that point to here, we can generally build all of the intervals that we're ever going to need. Now, not everyone uses these because not everyone cares about the overtones and how they sound when you play notes from the series with other notes from a related series. It's a very Western European thing to do. If you head to Indonesia, if you head to China, they do not have this sort of imperative. And so they don't build their scales from the overtone series because they don't necessarily like the way that sounds, historically speaking. Now, with the globalization of pop music and all that, it's relatively well accepted in a lot of places, but you'll still have raga that are not really this way. You'll have Pelog and Slendro that are not like this. But this is the foundation of our intervals and, consequently, our harmony. Now, you notice how I was talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And how you multiply the frequency to get to each of those points? Well, it works no matter where you go. So if you're at A440, so A440 is fairly standard nowadays. I don't remember exactly which A it is, but it's either this one or the next one up. It's 440 hertz. Hertz is just measuring how many times something happens per second. So this is vibrating 440 times every second. Whew, that's quite a few. When you get down low, if it still sounds like just a note, it is more than 20 hertz. 20 hertz is that threshold of human hearing where it goes from sounding like independent events to sounding like just a sound. And then if you keep going up and 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 up, about 20,000 is where human hearing cuts off for the high end, where you can't really hear it anymore, but dogs can. Well, that 20,000 is a rough estimate because people are different, and as you get older, you tend to lose that high end a bit. But as a rule of thumb, 20 to 20,000 is where people are able to hear things as sound. And that includes the overtones. And so as you get older, the way things sound will change. Not the pitch, but the tone will seem to change as you get older. It'll either get more muted, or you'll prefer the more high overtone, sharp sort of sounds, because then you can finally hear it like you used to. So that's the overtone, how you get the frequencies of them. Well, you can also build entire systems of notes around these exact proportions. Because a major third that you're going to find on a piano or pretty much any instrument is not the 5-4 relationship of this to that. Of this top note to this bottom one. 5-4 is not the proportion we actually use in practice. Because it sounds real nice. But it causes some mathematical issues when moving forward. Let me turn on my circle of fifths here for you. Because to be able to go all the way around the circle and end up back where you started, you need to be able to consistently multiply in a way that will return you back to, well, not strictly where you started, but to get to the next octave. So if you go around this circle of fifths, you need to go up and then down and then up and then down and then up and then down and up and down all the way around to the next C up. So if you start on our good friend E here, E flat, D flat, C. So here you've got C. So if we want to go around that circle, C to G, and then D to A, and then E to B, and then G flat, and then D flat, and then A flat, and then E flat, and then B flat, and then F, and then C. Well, we have gone from C, is that C? E, E flat, D, D flat, C. So from C to C, we have multiplied our frequency by 2. Exactly 2. But we had to do a little bit of fiddling along the way to make sure it worked. And if you used the perfect 3/2, which is G up from C, and then using a comparable rational fraction to come back down, you wouldn't exactly make it to 2. You'd be close. Ish. But you wouldn't be right there. And so sometime, I don't know the exact date because there's no real exact date, they decided, well, we should make all of these intervals completely even, such that the distance for each semitone is multiplying by the same amount, such that when you multiply it 12 times, that's how many there are over here, 12 steps. Well, 12 half steps. So you multiply 12 times and you get exactly 2. Any of you out there good enough at math to tell me, what can you multiply 12 times to get 2? Going once. Going twice. Sold! The 12th root of 2. But you never expected to need the 12th root of 2, did you? Well, that is what you multiply to go from this frequency to that one. Or from this one to that one. Or this one to that one. Every semitone multiplies the frequency of the note you start at by the 12th root of 2 to go up a half step. And you can divide by the 12th root of 2 to go down. Oof. That's what we call equal temperament. It's not perfect when it comes to these nice overtone-based intervals, but it is where it came from. So this is where it came from. The 12th root of 2 is where it ended up, such that you can go all the way around this circle without running into any wolves. Now, If you're curious about the wolf, look it up online. It'll take you down a nice rabbit hole regarding temperament and why we use equal temperament these days. But that's all I've got for this episode. I will see you in the next episode of Let's Learn the Electric Bass with Lyte.